Okay, so get ready because today we are really diving deep into some fascinating stuff.
Definitely.
The mind of Robin Hanson. I think you were curious about his thoughts on prediction markets
Yeah,
and that whole cultural drift idea and how those things might be connected.
absolutely.
And what's so interesting about Hanson is he's not your typical economist,
Not at all.
right? I mean, the guy started as a physicist.
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
No. So what do you think it is about a background in physics that might lead someone to economics?
Well, physics, it's not just about like crunching numbers or anything. It's about looking for those hidden patterns in the universe.
Right.
It's finding these really elegant equations behind all this seemingly chaotic stuff.
Right.
And Hansen brings that same kind of drive to economics.
Yeah.
He's not content with just surface level explanations. He's trying to find like the underlying structures, the fundamental forces that are actually driving human behavior. Like
Yeah.
what is the gravity
Yeah.
that's shaping our choices?
It's like he's searching for the grand unified theory of why we do the things we do.
Exactly.
But okay, before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Right.
we should probably start with these prediction markets. You had some questions about those.
Yeah, I do.
So just to recap, the basic idea, right? Betting markets, but designed specifically to get these really accurate answers to important questions.
Yeah, and they're surprisingly effective.
They really are. And Hanson's not just talking about this stuff theoretically.
Right.
He actually went and built one of these things back at Xanadu when he was working on hypertext.
He was really in the trenches with it.
Yeah, and that experience, it seems like it really shaped his views on this because it showed him how well prediction markets can work, but also some of the reasons they're so difficult to implement in the real world.
Yeah, it's not always smooth sailing.
So tell me about that.
Well, the market itself, it worked surprisingly well. It was predicting things like product launch dates with really impressive accuracy.
Hmm.
But sometimes the people in charge, well, they didn't necessarily want that level of accuracy.
Oh, interesting. Why not?
It's like imagine having a tool that could tell you the future,
Right.
but sometimes it's giving you these uncomfortable truths, and you realize you'd almost rather not know.
Wow. So it's like that old saying, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, in a way. And, that tension there, the desire for accurate information, but also the desire for control, that seems to be a thread that runs through a lot of Hanson's work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it makes me think about his ideas on cultural drift.
Yeah, definitely.
Because did you know he used to think that culture was like too wishy-washy of a topic to even study seriously?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he admitted that he kind of dismissed it early on in his career.
Interesting.
He thought it was too soft of a science compared to his beloved physics.
Yeah, because physics, you can measure it, you can quantify it.
Right, exactly.
Mm.
But then he came to this realization that culture might actually be the most powerful force on the planet.
Hmm.
Because it's not just about art or music or whatever.
It's deeper than that.
It shapes everything.
Yeah.
Like how we behave, what we value, even like how many kids we choose to have. It's all influenced by this thing we call culture.
Yeah, it's like the water we swim in. We don't even realize it's there most of the time, but it's shaping everything.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Hansen argues that this cultural evolution, it's kind of running on autopilot.
On autopilot.
Yeah, like no one's
Yeah.
really at the wheel.
Wow, okay, that is unsettling.
Right. It's a little unnerving when you think about it. He actually compares it to a sports car speeding down the road,
Okay.
but with a broken steering wheel.
Oh, no, that's not a good situation.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, he says there are three major ways in which our cultural evolution has gone kind of off the rails
Right.
compared to like our ancestors.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm curious. So what's the first way?
Well, for one thing, there's way less variety.
Less variety in what sense?
In terms of cultures themselves, like think about it. Thousands of years ago, you had all these unique cultures all over the world. Each one was like a different experiment
Right.
in how to live, how to structure society, all these different values and traditions.
Right, like a testing ground for different ideas.
Exactly. And now we're down to just a handful of dominant cultures. So less diversity, less experimentation.
And potentially less adaptation.
Yeah, we're putting all our cultural eggs in a few baskets and hoping for the best.
Okay, not exactly a recipe for success long term.
No, it's not. And that's just the first way we're drifting. So
Yeah.
it's not just about like whether I decide to have kids tomorrow. It's about these like bigger cultural forces
Exactly.
that are shaping those decisions in the first place.
Yeah, it's like we're all part of this big cultural experiment, but we don't even realize the experiment's happening.
Yeah, and we're not really sure what the hypothesis is.
Right, exactly. And it makes
Yeah.
you wonder what other things that we take for granted are actually just products of this drift, these
Yeah.
subtle pressures that we might not even be aware of.
Yeah, like what if our whole definition of success or happiness or progress has been shaped by this like runaway train of cultural evolution?
It's like Hanson is saying, hey, wake up, look around. The steering wheel might be broken, but that doesn't mean we can't try to understand where we're heading and maybe even course correct a little bit.
Okay, so how do we do that? Like, let's say I'm convinced
Yeah.
cultural drift is real, it's happening, and I want to just be swept along by the current.
Yeah.
What's my first move? Like, do I need to go live off the grid and like start a commune and try to recreate those selection pressures we talked about?
Yeah. Well, hold on there. Hanson wouldn't advocate for anything that drastic. He's not a doomsayer.
Yeah.
He's more like a concerned friend saying, hey, have you noticed this?
Right.
His big thing is awareness. He wants us to start paying attention to the cultural water that we're swimming in.
Right.
Read up on cultural evolution. See how it plays out in your own field, in your own life.
So I need to become a cultural anthropologist on top of everything else.
You don't need a PhD.
Okay, good.
But it's about applying that lens to what you already do.
Right.
Like you mentioned, being fascinated by prediction markets.
Yeah.
And how they could be used to tackle something like climate change.
Yeah.
Hanson actually talks about that. He sees potential there, but he also warns about the cultural hurdles.
Right, because even if you can predict the best course of action, actually getting people to take it, that's a whole other ballgame.
It's like that saying, it's hard to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it.
Oof. Yeah, that's a tough one. But, okay, let's assume we can raise awareness. We can even, like, nudge cultural norms in a better direction.
Okay.
What about the innovation part?
Yeah.
Because Hanson seems pretty convinced that declining populations mean less progress.
Right. He sees that as a big risk long term.
Yeah.
But he also throws out this other really intriguing idea.
Okay.
What if AI could be the answer? What if instead of worrying about having fewer humans, we could create machines that innovate for us?
Okay, now that's just straight out of science fiction.
I know it sounds crazy.
But I have to admit, it's a tempting thought.
Yeah.
Like if AI could solve the climate crisis,
Yeah.
design new energy sources, even like come up with cures for diseases,
Yeah.
maybe it wouldn't matter as much if there were fewer of us around to actually enjoy it, you know?
It's a bold vision, and Hanson definitely sees AI as a potential game changer. But even he admits it's not a guaranteed win. I mean, for one thing, replicating that kind of creative spark that you find in a place like Silicon Valley,
Right.
that's not easy, even with really advanced AI. There's something about that mix of ambition and competition.
The drive.
Yeah, and even just plain luck.
Yeah.
It's really hard to engineer.
So we can't just like throw a bunch of super intelligent AI in a room and expect miracles. Darn it.
It would be nice.
I was really hoping that was the easy solution. But seriously, though, even if AI can innovate, you're saying it might not be the same kind of innovation.
Right.
The kind that's actually beneficial for humanity.
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where Hanson's work gets really interesting, because he forces us to confront these uncomfortable possibilities.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what does it even mean to solve a problem?
Right.
If the solution creates a whole new set of challenges that we're not prepared for.
Okay, now I'm really starting to feel the weight of all this. It's like every time we peel back a layer of the onion,
It's complex.
we find a whole new set of complexities.
Number questions.
Yeah. So where does that leave us?
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do with all this information? All this uncertainty?
That's the beauty of it, though, isn't it?
The beauty of it.
Yeah, Hanson's not handing us a set of answers on a silver platter. He's giving us a new set of questions to ask.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, this cultural drift thing, it's powerful. It's shaping our world in ways we might not even realize. So what are you going to do about it?
Okay, I get it. Awareness is key.
Yeah.
But then what? What do I do with that awareness?
That's where agency comes in.
Agency.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that even though we're part of this larger cultural flow,
Right.
we're not just passive droplets being carried along.
Right.
We have the ability to make choices,
Right.
to steer our own course, even if it means swimming against the current sometimes.
So it's not about like stopping the drift. It's about learning to navigate it.
Exactly.
You know, I'm starting to think we need a whole separate deep dive just to like unpack all the questions that Hanson raises about this stuff. But I guess for now, like the big one is if this cultural drift thing is so powerful, if it really is shaping our future in these like subtle but profound ways,
Yeah.
what can we actually do about it?
Well, that's where Hanson throws us a little bit of a curveball.
Okay.
He suggests that maybe, just maybe one of the most powerful things we can do is nothing.
Wait, seriously, after all that talk about agency and, like, making different
I
choices,
know it sounds counterintuitive.
now you're telling me we should just, like, sit back and let the cultural chips fall where they may? I don't know if I'm following.
It's not about inaction, it's about a different kind of action.
Okay.
He calls it taking the outside view.
The outside view.
Yeah, so instead of getting caught up in our own, like, limited perspective, our own cultural bubble,
Right.
he wants us to step back and look at the bigger picture. Think about it throughout history. Countless cultures have risen and fallen,
Right.
each with their own unique set of values and beliefs.
Yeah.
What makes us think that ours is so different, so immune to those same forces of change?
Okay. That's a humbling thought. So you're saying, like, instead of trying to desperately cling to the way things are,
Right.
or even trying to force the future into some, like, predetermined mold,
Yeah,
we should be trying to be more comfortable with the idea of change itself. To
exactly.
accept that cultural drift is kind of inevitable,
Yeah.
and maybe even see it as an opportunity.
It's like that quote from Heraclitus, the ancient Greek philosopher.
Okay.
He said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man."
Okay, I like
The
that.
river of culture is always flowing, always changing. Our job isn't to stop the flow, but to learn how to swim in it, how to navigate the currents,
Right?
and maybe even how to use them to our advantage.
That's a much more, dare I say, optimistic take on cultural drift than I was expecting.
Yeah,
So it's not about despair, it's about adaptation.
exactly.
It's about becoming more aware of these forces that are shaping our world.
Yes.
And then using that knowledge to make informed decisions about how we want to live,
Yeah.
how we want to contribute to the future, even if that future looks different from what we imagined.
You got it.
Wow, okay. This has been quite the deep dive.
It has.
We explored these, like, mind-bending possibilities of prediction markets.
Yeah.
We grappled with this kind of unsettling reality of cultural drift.
That's a lot to process.
And we even dared to imagine a future where AI might inherit the reins of innovation.
Who knows what the future holds?
But most importantly, I think what we've learned is that even in the face of these complex, seemingly overwhelming forces,
Yeah.
our individual choices, our willingness to question, to learn to adapt, they still matter.
They do.
It gives me hope.
Me too.
So to our listener, we leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
The future is not a destination, it's a journey.
It is a journey.
And as you navigate the ever-changing currents of culture, technology, and human ingenuity, remember that you are not just along for the ride, you are the navigator.
You have the power.
Choose your course wisely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.